Well, good evening, everyone. It is Monday, September 16th, 2024. It is 7 p.m. Meeting number 5289. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Chuck Trader,
Here.
Commissioner Rick Sowers,
Here.
Commissioner Michael Burns,
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Reiner,
Here.
Commissioner Daniel Pogue absent.
Alrighty, at this time, invocation by Pastor Eric O'Neill of the Church of the Nazarene. Welcome, sir.
Thank you again for the privilege of being here tonight. Would you all pause with me for a moment of prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful to begin this meeting by acknowledging your presence with us today and our dependence on you for the work ahead. For that, we offer these requests. We ask that these leaders would rely on your wisdom for their deliberations, that their decisions would reflect your priority for justice, and that their service to this community would be a demonstration of your humility. Leadership carries a weighty responsibility, and your word tells us that not all should seek positions like these because they will be held to a higher standard. Grant these leaders the strength to bear this burden. As they conduct the business of this city, may their actions honor the trust placed in them, that they may do the work you have given them to do with courage, integrity, and for the common good. For the sake of the one who comes among us as one who serves, the one who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. At this time, would you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we are on the agenda this evening. We're going to remove number 5 in new business, which is pertains to the MOU for the Dodge City Country Club. And with that, seek a motion for approval of the agenda as amended.
Your Honor, I would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. At this time, we'll move into petitions and proclamations. We have none. We will open up the visitor section, limit of 5 minutes per individual, 15 minutes per topic. Final action may be deferred until next city commissioner meeting unless an emergency situation does exist. Anybody in the audience care to come forward and address the commission this evening? None of you guys back there? Okay, at this time, we will close the visitor section and seek a motion for the consent calendar.
Your Honor, I'd move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Moving on to ordinance and resolution. First ordinance number 3818, an ordinance authorizing and providing insurance of general obligation bonds series 2024-A, providing for levy and collection of annual tax for purposes of paying principal and interest of said bond. Report by Nicole May, Finance Director. Mrs. May?
Mayor, Commissioners, tonight I am asking for approval of ordinance number 3818. This ordinance authorizes and provides for the issuance of general obligation bonds series 2024-A, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax for the purposes of paying the principal and interest on these bonds. Previously, action was taken to fund several street improvements, including northbound 14th Avenue Bridge, 6th Avenue and Comanche Street, 14th Avenue and McCarter Road, and the overpass project. Approving ordinance number 3818 authorizes the issuance of these bonds in a principal amount of approximately $2,090,000 to pay the cost of these improvements. The bonds were sold today, and there were 5 bidders, and the lowest interest rate was 3.78%, and the highest was 3.99. And our financial advisors were very happy with those rates. So, I think, can we do resolution 2024-18 at the same time.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any objection for us to do 2024-18?
Both with the bonds.
No, sir. Do I need to read?
You want to read that section?
Resolution number 2024-18 prescribes the form and details and authorizes and directs the sale and delivery of general obligation bonds series 2024-A. These were authorized by ordinance number 3818, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain other documents and actions connected therewith. All legal considerations have been met. These were prepared by bond counsel. So
you're seeking approval of ordinance number 3818 and 2024-18?
When's the first payment going to be due on that?
when will the first payment be due? March 1st, 2025.
So you've budgeted that in the 25 budget?
Yes.
Was there a coordinating amount of debt that was coming off in 25 that we're able to make that payment without a big impact on the mill levy?
Yes, there's actually more. I mean, this was a pretty small debt issue. So there's actually more debt coming off this year than what we are issuing again. So.
Do we need to handle that in two separate motions?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move to approve ordinance number 3818.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 3818. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to approve resolution number 2024-18.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Okay, next moving on to resolution number 2024-17, a resolution authorizing and directing the issue, sales, of delivering general obligation bond temporary notes, series 2024-1 of the city of Dodge City, Kansas, providing for levy and collection of annual tax if necessary for paying the principal and interest of said note as they become due, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain other documents and action connections therewith. Report by Nicole May, Finance Director.
Mayor, Commissioners, I'm asking for approval of resolution number 2024-17. This is offering for sale the temporary notes and approving the preliminary official statement. This resolution offers for sale general obligation temporary note series 2024-1 in an amount not to exceed $9 million. These temporary notes will be used to finance the infrastructure improvements for United Village. United Village is an RHID, so at the time that these temporary notes are refinanced with general obligation bonds, they will, the repayment of these will be done through the special assessments through the RHID process. And the temporary notes also sold today. There were 4 bids, with the low bid of 3.58% and the highest was 3.9%. So, and these are just the temporary notes for United Village infrastructure.
Any further questions for Nicole or any action on this item?
I'd like to go back just one step and talk about the bonds a little bit on the streets. As we see the interest decreasing, have you mapped out where you think you want to do bonds for the next couple of years? Because issuing a $2 million bond seems to be pretty small, you know, and maybe we, as interest rates get sub 3, maybe we ought to think about either doing some temporary notes or issuing a bigger general obligation bond to tackle a few more residential streets in one big fell swoop rather than piecemeal it out as we get the money in and do that. Because I think maybe we get sub 3 market rates. That might be a thought process, but
Yes.
that's my only thought. So.
Yes, and that's
mean-
exactly what engineering, I've been working with engineering to kind of lay out what our plan is over the next 5 years, which street projects we think we're going to need to do in which areas and what the estimate cost of those is, and that's exactly why we've been working together.
Yeah, because I don't know what the issuance cost for that $2 million bond was, but it's probably not a whole lot higher if we'd got bigger bonds. So.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be too much on the 2 million, but
Okay. All right.
yeah, but yes, we've been working with engineering to kind of map those out. So
All right, thank you. Your Honor, make a motion, we adopt resolution 2024-17.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Moving on to unfinished business, we have none. First item under new business, approval of the 2023 audit report by Nicole May, Finance Director.
tonight we have for approval and acceptance the 2023 audited financial statements. John Hendrickson of Kennedy McKee, the auditors, is here and he will present the audit report.
Very good. Welcome, John.
Hello. Do you all have a copy of the audit report in front of you? If you do, I'll have you open it up. There's going to be a letter in there that's bound, that's not stapled.
They may not have the letter.
Do you not have it? Yeah, be very careful. So it has the governance letter in it, which is required communication between the auditor and management and the board. So it just states in the first paragraph, we audited the financial statement of the city of Dodge City for the year ended December 31st, 2023, and professional standards that require us to communicate information about our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards. So that's what we're doing. Under the qualitative aspects of accounting practices, it states that management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. Those policies are in Note A of the financial statements. There were no new accounting policies that were adopted, and the application of existing policies did not change. We did not note any transactions that the city entered into that lacked authoritative guidance or census, and all significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statement in the proper period. If you turn to the second page, if we had any difficulties in dealing with management performing and completing the audit, that would be noted. We did not. As far as corrected and uncorrected misstatements, the only material entry that we proposed was to record additional retainage of $1.5 million. So that's just going to be amounts on construction projects where the work has been completed, but it doesn't get billed until the end of the project. So that was one entry that we did propose. As far as disagreements with management, if we had disagreements regarding financial accounting, reporting, or auditing matters not result to our satisfaction, they would be noted in this paragraph. We do get representations from management. Most of them are regarding contingencies, pending threatened litigations, things like that. We received those in a letter that was dated August 22nd. And then the last item, management's consultation with other independent accountants. If there are any disagreements and management wants to obtain a second opinion, they're free to do so. The only caveat is the consultant would be required to consult with us to make sure they have all the relevant facts. If you turn to the bound part of the report, there's a couple pages that are the table of contents, and then there's the independent auditor's report with our letterhead on it. So the first thing listed are the opinions on the financial statements. So It says adverse and unmodified opinion, so it states that we audited the accompanying the fund summary statement of regulatory basis receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash as of December 31st, 2023, and the related notes to the financial statement. So those are what we audited. Next is an adverse opinion on U.S. GAAP. So the city has opted to follow the budgetary basis of accounting, which is allowed by Kansas law. So when you opt out of that, you're not following GAAP, but because this report is publicly available, it has to have an opinion on GAAP. So the opinion is adverse, but when you look down at the next paragraph, there's an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting. And it states that in our opinion, the accompanying financial statement referred to above presents fairly in all material respects the aggregate cash and unencumbered cash balances of the city as of December 31st, 2023, in accordance with the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. So you are receiving an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting. I'm just going to go skip over the rest of the letter. It's just basically responsibilities and scope information of the audit. If you turn to page 5, this is your statement, your fund summary statement. So on the left-hand side, you have all of your funds. You have your general fund and your special purpose funds. And at the top, you have your beginning unencumbered cash, receipts, expenditures, unencumbered cash, which will be equity, your outstanding payables and encumbrances, and then your ending cash. So looking at the general fund, it started with $5.2 million. It had $18 million in receipts, $20 million in expenditures. It ended with $3.4 million of unencumbered cash, and then there was $1.2 million of accounts payable, and then $4.6 million of ending cash. On the special purpose funds, I don't know that there's a lot to point out other than the capital equipment reserve. It had $1 million deficit at the end of the year, but there was $1,070,000 of accounts payable, so it did have positive cash, but it was just a payable that was incurred at the end of the year. Looking at all of the special purpose funds, they started with $12 million of unencumbered cash, ended with $9.5 million, so they did go down a little bit, but they will vary from year to year. If you turn to page 6, the next group listed is the special purpose grant funds. Started the year with $2.2 million, had ending unencumbered cash at the end of the year of $1.6 million. The thing I do want to point out is the American Rescue Plan Act started with $2.2 million, ended with $1.5 million. That's most of the decrease. And that ARPA money has to be obligated by the end of this year and then spent by the end of 2026. So that's federal money that you're going to have obligated by the end of the year or send it back. Next is bond and interest funds. So you started the year with $5 million in unencumbered cash, ended the year with $5.9 million in unencumbered cash. Most of the decrease is in the two revenue bond funds, the Special Events Center and the water park. Next is capital project funds. And the thing with them is they vary significantly depending on the timing of when debt's issued. If you turn to the second page, page 7, one thing I will point out, Nikki just mentioned United Village. United Village started with $0. It had $2.4 million of expense. $2.2 million was the cash deficit, all because bonds hadn't been issued. Same thing with Iron Flats. There's $2.6 million was the deficit. Receipts $6.3 million. Expenditures $4.6. That has about a $900,000 deficit at the end of the year. And then the one I also missed, the airport terminal, has a $1.6 million deficit. So again, it's all just because bonds haven't been issued. Next are water utility funds. The total business funds were $5.3 million was the beginning unencumbered cash. You'll notice that the ending unencumbered cash was an $11 million deficit. It's pretty well all caused by the construction, the wastewater treatment plant construction. There was $19 million of expense and no drawdowns from the KDHE had been completed as of the end of the year. So it has a $21 million deficit, which has probably been cleaned up by now. On page 9, note A is the significant accounting policies and the financial statements. I'm going to skip over those. Just point out on page 11, under budgetary information, there were 3 funds that the budget was amended on. So you see the original budgets for the Convention and Visitors Fund, Special Streets and Highways, and Wastewater. So those were the original amounts and then the amended amounts. If you turn to page 12, compliance with Kansas statutes, in the second paragraph, it does state that there were expenditures that exceeded the adopted budget in the sales tax, general obligation, bond and interest fund, water utilities, solid waste, drainage, and vehicle maintenance. So those 5 funds all had budget violations. And then next are the ones with cash basis violations or negative cash balances, unencumbered cash balances. Most of those are your construction funds or your capital project funds. And then the last group listed are the federal funds, which they operate on a reimbursement basis, so they're exempt from cash basis law. If you turn to the next page, page 14, capital projects, the only thing I'm going to point out is this just shows the project authorization as of the end of the year, the amount of expenditures that have been incurred year to date, including accounts payable. So those 5 projects have $85 million in expenses authorized, and there's $28 million spent at the end of the year. So about $50 million to go, $58 million. Next is long-term debt. This shows every issue that the city has outstanding. Starts with general obligation bonds, shows the beginning amount, any issues, payments, and then an ending balance. If you turn the page, it continues with general obligation bonds, then goes to revenue bonds. The KDHE wastewater loan, which is not on the construction, that's a prior loan. And then your finance leases, and then temporary obligations. And then one thing that Rick had brought up was a question regarding the payments that would be due in 2024. So at the bottom of page 17, it lists them out. The general obligation bonds will pay off $5.9 million in principal. And then if you go to the next page, revenue bonds will pay off $2.1 million. Loans, $726,000. Finance leases, $263,000. And then typically the temporary notes are refinanced, so they're really kind of irrelevant. One other thing to go over, page 20, other long-term obligations. In the middle of the page, it shows the future commitments for the voluntary early retirement plan. So there's about $518,000 that will be paid out through 2034. Page 22, contingencies. Only thing to point out in the second paragraph, it states that the city received $4.1 million from the Department of Treasury through ARPA, and that amount, as of December 31st, there was $1.5 million remaining, and that amount must be obligated by the end of 2024, and it has to be spent by the end of 2026. If you keep going, next is the supplementary information. So on page 24, you have an actual and budget listing. It shows the certified budget, the expenditures for comparison, and then whether or not there was any budget authority remaining, or if they're in brackets. Those were the ones where the budget was overspent. I guess one thing I would think about, there was a couple of the funds that had some very significant payables at the end of the year. If you do have to amend it, the thing I think I would do is amend it significantly, so something like an encumbrance at the end of the year doesn't create a budget violation. On page 25 is this starts the individual fund statements. I'm not going to go over really a lot of it. The first one is the general fund. The thing I will point out, page 29, at the bottom of the page, administration contractual services, you'll notice it went up about $1 million. That was legal fees in defense of the lawsuit. So when people probably don't know that it actually costs the city money to defend themselves, but it's something they probably should know. Just flipping through, if you turn to page 43, one thing I will point out, because Rick made a comment about it. On the right-hand side of the page, the second fund listed is the street sales tax fund. So that was approved by an election. So you have the sales tax of $2.2 million that is solely for streets, and then there was about $2.2 million that was spent during the year. The last thing I want to skip over to, page 53, water utility fund. What I want to point out is on the receipts, the National Beef Bond payment, if you look at the prior year, it's $247,000. If you look at the current year, it's $5,400. It's a timing issue, so it was billed later in the year, and National Beef probably cut the check during 2023, but it wasn't received until 2024. And on cash basis financial statements, no receipts are recognized until received. So what's going to happen next year is basically that number is going to get doubled up. And then you have
for 2024, you'll only have the one payment from 2023 because it has expired in
Yeah.
20.
oh, it
That
did.
was the last
Okay.
payment. Yeah.
And then the same thing on the wastewater fund. The $577,000 was received in 2022. It's $12,000 in 2023. So again, you're going to receive it late. The thing to point out on the water fund and the wastewater fund is the unencumbered cash balances are really good. You have plenty carrying over in water, and the same thing in wastewater. If you turn to page 55, the biogas fund, it started the year with a negative unencumbered cash. It also ended with negative unencumbered cash, but it was about $700,000 better than what was it started the year with. Solid waste, same way. There's about $2.6 million of expense, about $1 million of carryover. So again, you've got about 5 months worth of expenditures covered. And then the utility drainage fund on page 57, $145,000 in ending unencumbered cash, which is about 4 months of expense. So the utility funds really look pretty good, and considering that they're transferring money out. Next is the vehicle maintenance fund. The thing I do want to point out on it is it has a $450,000 unencumbered cash deficit. And you'll notice that the internal charges went from 397 to 199. A lot of that was your change in accounting software, and reports weren't available, so the transfers didn't get made. If you turn the page to 59, facilities maintenance is the same way. It was a new fund this year. There were no receipts, $380,000 in expense. So we didn't make a management comment for it, given that it's never been an issue in the past, and I don't expect it to be an issue going forward. So I just wanted to point that out. If you turn to page 66, one more thing I want to just go over briefly. Schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So anytime money is spent that originates at the federal level and exceeds $750,000, you're required to undergo compliance testing under uniform guidance. We're required to test major programs, and that we would have to equal or exceed 40% of the total. The American Rescue Plan Act had $739,000, which is more than half, and that's the program we audited. And if you turn to page 68, there's a schedule of findings and question costs, and we already went over the opinion on the financial statements. Item 2 says no significant deficiencies over the financial statements, or the report on internal control over financial reporting. Item 3, there were no instances of non-compliance relating to the financial statements. Item 4, this would be with respect to compliance testing on the major federal programs. It says no significant deficiencies relating to the audit of the major federal award programs. And then in item 5, we're opining on compliance, and it states that the auditors report on compliance for major federal programs, expresses an unmodified opinion on all major programs, and then in item 7 lists the ARPA as the program. So that's really all I have to go over unless there's any questions. It's really a good report.
Always like to ask, and I know the answer already, but there's no material findings on this audit.
No, so if there were any material findings, they would be noted on page 68 under items B or C. And the only one that would really even be close would be the internal charges not getting moved on those two funds, which, again, if it weren't for accounting software changes and things like that, it would be different. But given those circumstances, we opted not to.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for John or Nicole on this item?
Your Honor, I would move to accept the 2023 audited financial statement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you,
sir.
Thanks, John.
Number 2, approval of supplemental agreement for South Dodge Trail Extension from Wright Park to Beeson Arboretum. Report by Ray Slattery, Director of Engineering. Mr. Slattery.
Mayor and Commissioners, tonight I'm asking your approval of the supplemental agreement with SMH Consultants PA to provide the final construction bidding documents and plans for the South Dodge Trail Extension in the amount of $166,077.50. At the June 19th, 2023 Commission meeting, the Commission approved the Discovery and Bridge Design agreement with SMH PA for the extension of the South Dodge Trail proposed along Sunnyside Avenue from Wright Park to Beeson Arboretum. The final alignment and the trail extension has been completed and an actual design has started. The design of the pedestrian bridge across the Arkansas River is also well underway, along with the necessary permitting. This supplemental agreement will complete the plan and specifications preparation to meet the KDOT requirements, which this project will be let as a KDOT project because the project is a TA grant with KDOT where they'll pick up 80% and we will be paying 20% of the construction of the project. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any projects or questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Slattery or any action on this item?
Ray, does this take care of the bidding documents for the entire trail, including the bridge?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then are we 100% responsible for this cost?
We are 100% responsible for the design and acquisition of property or easements or temporary construction easements. The construction is the 80-20 match between the state and the city.
So I'm assuming now you've got the Wright Park design, the zoo part of it down to where
we are working.
Going to be.
Yeah, we are working together with the master plan so that the connection of the north side of the river bridge will tie into the trail network that's being proposed through the master plan and the zoo expansion. Along with the water line relocate, and there's several things going on in that part of town.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to approve the supplemental agreement with SMH Consultants to provide the final construction bidding documents for the South Dodge Trail Extension in the amount of $166,077.50.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Number 3, design agreement for 6th and Sewell. Report by Ray Slattery, Director of Engineering. Mr. Slattery.
Mayor and Commissioners, tonight I'm asking your approval of consulting service agreement again with SMH Consultants PA in the amount of $101,915 for the discovery phase of the Sewell Street corridor from Manor Drive to First Avenue and the 6th Avenue corridor from Comanche Street to Sewell Street. With looking, also included in that is looking at ways to improve the school access on these two corridors. Sewell Street and 6th Avenue are considered a major collector and minor arterial respectively, and they're located in an area of town that has 3 schools, which creates congestion in the morning and afternoons. These 2 roadways have been identified for improvements. So in June of this year, the city posted an RFQ, or request for qualifications, to provide design services for the proposed roadways, utilities, and school access improvements. We received 5 responses to the RFQ. City staff from multiple departments reviewed the submittals and scored them using specified criteria. SMH Consultants PA received the highest score from the selection committee. Part of this discovery phase will include the surveying of these 2 corridors, traffic data collection at the 5 major intersections, which would be 6th and Comanche, 6th and Morgan Boulevard, 6th and Sewell, 1st and Sewell, and 1st and Morgan, along with meeting with stakeholders, the city staff, including engineering, PD, and fire, and also the school district to gather input on what we see happening on those 2 roadways. There will also be a public open house once a conceptual design is determined for these 2 corridors. And then also a meeting or work session will be presented to you so that to show you those concepts. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
How far on either side of 6th from Sewell are you going down? Are you going down quite a ways in either direction? Or?
On Sewell Street, we would be going to, I call it the south leg of Manor Drive, which is right there at Chilton Park. From there east, we're looking to widen Sewell Street to provide a 2-way left turn lane. Also pedestrian accessibility with sidewalks or a sidewalk and a trail, depending on what we can do with utilities. We'd also like to get a trail or a multi-use path connection from the schools to Chilton Park, where the other major pathway is through town. Going east of 6th Avenue, we'll be studying school accesses points and what can be done to improve that all the way to 1st Avenue. Some things that have been kicked around are road diets or using part of the existing street as something other than a travel way to provide that access. We'll figure that out as we go through this discovery phase.
So what's the time frame on discovery again?
I'd have to look that up. Kurth is also here with the SMH. He may be able to answer that better, but
And it's just like a year kind of a thing where we're analyzing over a year, 6 months?
I'd say 6 months.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to work on it that way.
And then you'll come back with a preliminary design process, and then you'll want to bid that back out for actual design to bid specs.
We would probably bring a supplement agreement back to you with SMH to finish design, put together the bid docs so that we can bid that project in the future. We're probably looking at a 2026 project at the earliest for these 2 corridors. And this project may be broken up into phases or separate little projects that could be bid based on timing and school access and things like that.
And of the overall design portion, this portion is half of it, a third of it, quarter of it? Are we expecting a couple $100,000 more for the design side of it? I mean,
I would say probably about another 200,000 or so.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll make a motion that we approve SMH for the amount of $101,915 for the discovery phase of Sewell Street and 6th Avenue.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Number 4, approval of Presbyterian Manor, Inc. Healthcare Facility Revenue Bond Report by Nicole May, Finance Director.
Mayor, Commissioners, tonight I am recommending that the Commission support Resolution 24-297 adopted by the City of Wichita, determining the advisability of issuing healthcare facilities revenue bonds for Presbyterian Manor, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $90 million. The reason that this is coming before you tonight is due to Presbyterian Manor has a location here, and a portion of these funds may be used at their location here. The City of Wichita will be issuing the bonds. Presbyterian Manor will be responsible for repayment of them. So all the City of Wichita is asking is for the governing body to approve the issuance of the bonds. No action can be taken at the meeting to approve or disapproving the bonds. So all you're really doing is approving support of this due to the location, them having a location in Dodge City that a portion of these proceeds may be used at. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
What determines the portion that would be used? Just their
whatever plans they have as far as work or remodeling or anything that may be being done at their location here. But they didn't provide us any of those amounts.
Could be zero.
Yeah.
We've done this a number of times. I'll make it fast. Your Honor, make a motion that we adopt Wichita's Resolution 24-297.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Next item, we're moving to number 6, approval of purchase of a Bobcat G30N-7 LP forklift. Report by Kevin Israel, Director of Facilities. Mr. Israel.
Evening, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. I'm here asking for your approval of the purchase of a new Doosan Bobcat forklift. The city has 3 units altogether, and we've had 2 of them go down on us here lately. So we're pretty desperate to get a new one in. We checked with our local suppliers. They could not match the rebate that Doosan Bobcat has put out right now. So we will go to them for the next RFPs to see if they can try to compete with that also.
Did you sell the old ones?
One went at the auction Saturday, and we will be able to sell both the other 2. So
Did you get what you thought at the auction?
twice.
Twice what we thought we'd get.
Yep.
So this machine will be where, Kevin, out at the MSB? Or?
So right now at the MSB, because the one at Crew is still running right now. So once we go through the next RFP, then we'll switch those out because we'll need an 8,000 pound unit at the MSB.
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve Bobcat G30N-7 LP forklift quote from Doosan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
That was an amount of $33,550.
Motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is number 7, which will be approval of agreement for Placer.ie order form to require a Placer data report by Megan Welsh, Director of Dodge City Convention and Visitor Bureau, and Melissa McCoy, Assistant City Manager of Public Affairs.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here tonight on behalf of Megan, Director of CVB. And so the purpose of the Placer AI would be to provide the Dodge City Convention Visitors Bureau as well as the city with research data that could be used for analytics and performance analytics to help us develop more drive growth within our community. And so we're asking for your approval tonight of the AI order form that was included in your packets for $45,712. That's for a 36-month initial term. And so just a little bit of background on this tool. So this is very advanced location analytics platform, and it observes different foot traffic that we'd have. It analyzes retail locations, visitor data, and provides statistically significant data basically on how our visitors interact with the different places within our community. And so this is a really good tool for travel and tourism because it can analyze our visitors' origins, their interests, their travel patterns in the region, and they can also help us do a better job of marketing and figuring out how do we target our marketing. And particularly when we're having events and to our different attractions and things of that nature. And then we'll also be able to garner monthly reports, visitor metrics, and things of different points of interest. And so, as I mentioned, we're asking for your approval, and there's a breakdown of the cost over the 36-month term each for the 3 years that you have there for the $45,712. City attorneys had a chance to review the order form and does not have any concerns with that. So I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
I do want to make a comment in regards, especially for the visitors that we have in the audience. So Placer AI, what they utilize is they use your cell phone data. So they track where your cell phone is. And so if you walk into Walmart, we know when you walked into Walmart, we know how much you spent in Walmart and where you went after you went to Walmart, or if you went and ate somewhere before you went to Walmart. But that's what Placer AI does. It tracks your purchase history with your debit credit card, but also your phone, and it tells us what time of day you basically went in there, how long you spent in there, and how much on average you spent while you were in that location. And they buy that data from your cell phone in order to then sell it to us to track trends, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But it's pretty much the number one source of data for retailers to make decisions on whether they come to our community or not. And so if you go to Garden City and shop there and come back, they know that, and they track your shopping habits in Garden, even if you live here or if it's in Wichita, no matter where you're at. And then they sell that information to those big giant retailers to help them make decisions on where to locate stores. And so it's a tool that's used by really everyone in the industry, be it retail or industrial or from economic developers. It's just used from a variety of different sources.
And we had a previous tool very similar to this, but not as, I would say, not quite as beneficial or as successful. We were having some issues with being able to track some of the data. And so that's when we started to investigate the opportunity to work with Placer AI.
So that was going to be my question. Has that contract ended?
Yes.
So it's significantly different from the contract that we had with the retail management group.
That is different than what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's actually a different contract. So the retail coach agreement, that's a completely different process, and that's more on the retail side. And
But they're tracking the same information, are they not?
They use a lot of different analytics software companies like Placer AI and other sources of data. But this is for CVB to have access to that data and not through Retail Coach.
One of the things, for example, that they can be able to tell with this is just, for example, on hotels, and when we have leakage on hotels and people are choosing, they may be visiting here, but they're not staying here within the region. And so they're able to follow some of those different trends and be able to tell them. When I was mentioning that, I was talking about a previous agreement very similar to this one that CBB did have in place, that I think that the software just wasn't as beneficial as what we will be seeing with this, and we began to find some issues that it wasn't tracking the information as we had intended it to.
So then that begs the question, you have the data, you have the information, what's actionable on it on our side?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I follow the question.
Well, you have all this information about it, but what, at the end of the day, what worth is that data? What actionable item can you change in reality that makes that data payable? If you know they travel here and stay here and they go somewhere else, what kind of actionable item do we have then to encourage?
So excellent question. The actionable item that you have is being able to better target your marketing materials for people that are here and see how you're able to drive that traffic more in that aspect of it. So it's really a tool for us to be able to amp up our marketing and know what makes sense of where we're targeting that marketing, rather than just kind of, trying to, as a bad example, but throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and this is through the CVB, and primarily the reason for them to look at it is I believe the previous provider was a more expensive type arrangement. It didn't provide the information they wanted, so they reached out to try to find an alternative method to receive better information. And so they reached out to Placer AI for their marketing perspective, primarily. The additional benefit is then we could potentially benefit from it as a city to utilize that data as well.
And with also within the state tourism, as they were looking at this as a better analytical tool for CBB's destination marketing organizations like ours to be able to utilize.
Do they have any numbers on how long you realize the return on this investment?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we can follow up with you on that. I do know that once we sign the agreement, it will immediately go into action. So, knowing that we're going to have monthly reports, the anticipated idea there is that we should be able to start tracking things within the next month.
Okay, any further questions for?
Well, just one other. The 45,712, is that for the 36-month total?
So each year, this city or the Convention and Visitors Bureau via the city would be paying. So, for example, year one, it's the 14,500. Year two, they'd be paying the 15,000, and then the 225, and then the 15,987.
So the 45,712 is for the 36 months.
Yes, for the 36 months.
I'm asking for so I can make a motion.
Okay,
And
understood.
this is budgeted, correct? Right?
Yes.
You gotta make a motion that we approve the amount for CBB of $45,712 for his 36-month initial contract with Placer AI.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Next item is number 8, approval of purchase agreement for real estate located at 313 South 2nd Avenue. Report by Nick Hernandez, City Manager. Mr. Hernandez.
Mayor, Commissioners, before you is a real estate agreement between Dodge Petroleum Inc. For the purchase of 313 South 2nd Avenue for an amount not to exceed $450,000. Over the last couple of years, we've been looking at the fire station number 2 and some of the remodeling and issues that we actually have with the facility itself, and trying to determine if it was the best case scenario to move forward with those improvements or to look at a structure that could potentially be utilized for other avenues as well. In discussions with fire department, the police department and with their staff. The purchase of a 313 South Second would be utilized for the movement of Fire Station 2 to that location. They could use the structure for an auxiliary station for police department, and it would open up the potential to have EMS services located within that building. There'd be 4 bays with 8 doors, so there'd be 4 doors on the north side of the building, 4 doors on the south side. There'd be 12 bunks with Jack and Jill style bathrooms for the fire department, which is a significant departure of even what they have at Station 1, which our plan is to go to that similar model at number 1. There's also be the availability of 3 bunks for future EMS needs, office space, some common areas, also be allowance for the SWAT vehicles for the police department to be located in there, as well as patrol units to be located within the facility. In looking at what similar fire station improvements or construction costs that are similar within the area, Garden City is in the process of building their fire station number 3 on the east side of town. That project's a $10.5 million project. What we're anticipating for this project is the $450,000 initial purchase price, and then about $2 million, maybe a little bit less, for the construction of the improvements at the site. Kevin Israel's been through the building, so's Ray and engineering, but we've also had contractors, had an electrical contractor or plumbing take a look at the facility, as well as having Jeff Schnitker and his construction crews take a look at the facility. The 313 South Second's pretty much an empty shell. There is some office spaces in an area, but those will be removed prior to be removed and replaced in the facility. As far as the construction of the bays and putting the doors into the building itself, we'd utilize a similar process where we get an architect to actually do the full-blown design of the facility, and then we would contract with the structural engineer to provide us plans for the openings on that facility. We did the same thing for the MSB building and also for the small door entrance that we have located at the police department. Kevin, you want to talk a little bit about the facility as far as the condition of it and what you're seeing as any concerns or any issues that you see?
The structure itself is in great shape. It's a block and brick structure. There's very little, if any, cracking in the existing building. We plan on replacing all the plumbing, electrical, HVAC. So it's basically just the shell is what we're looking at, and then all new going in. So.
How confident are you getting it done for $2 million after we get it purchased, if we get it purchased?
Pretty confident. The only things that we don't really know about at this point is what's going to be required for the fire department, such as decontamination and things like that. But to make it usable now, yeah, we're really confident we can make that happen.
The decon will be as individualized area with decontamination equipment, and that's coming down from the new fire department standards that have not been finalized yet by the NFPA.
And again, we're talking just construction, no new equipment that they might need. I think we'll have to address that separately. So.
It's got a flat roof, right?
Yep.
No issues there?
Oh, no, that's the roof is included in that. So it's very similar to what the PD roof was.
What year was that built?
Oh,
that structure?
1950s, I believe.
It's been added on to 3 times also. So,
but the part where you're putting vehicles at, do you know what year that was built? I mean, it goes back to 1930, right? Parts of the building?
It probably is the original 1930 structure was the front, if I believe.
Okay. And that's where you plan on putting the vehicles at? Right. And what's the concrete depth for that area in there, and compaction of soil and stuff? Ray's vehicle is probably close to 1930s that he drives in the parade. I can't imagine that an engineer in 1930 would be able to compensate for the weight of current vehicles that we have right now, and rolling in on a structure that was designed and engineered to be a grocery store.
Yeah, well, it's at least 8-inch concrete, and
How do you know that?
you can see it. It's right there. They have some chases that
Mhm.
you can see the thickness of the concrete. So
And you think that's through the entire floor at that 8-inch?
I would think so. If not, we can.
We talked about if we needed to, we could beef up the drive approaches for their, cut out the concrete and then replace with thicker concrete through the areas where we'd have the heavier vehicles, such as a pumper truck, or even if you were to put a ladder truck in there. But with the 8-inch concrete, that should be sufficient for 95% of the vehicles that be located in the building.
And parking lot improvements, you'll have to do some of those just per our code, right? Because you're going to have to tear out some of that and make some of that green space to be compliant with our codes.
If you touch, so it's grandfathered in, but if we go in there and touch and remove, yes, you'd have to put green space in.
Now we do plan on doing some sort of border between the two businesses, between the building we're looking at and the liquor store to the north. So maybe that would be a good spot to.
And there's currently a lease agreement that expires in March of next year, so that not very much time left on that, and it's for 10 spaces that are located on the property. But that's something we can look at, and we've already looked at potentially of relocation or even fencing along the drive to allow them to still have access to their building.
And on the concrete, if they'll let us beforehand, we could do some core samples.
Well, this kind of lead into my next area of, I'm not understanding the timing of the need of the purchase of this building to be such an immediate thing from such a short conversation that we had during a work session, when the amount of the purchase price is 50% lower than what we're looking at now, or it was significantly less than this. We've had a 50% markup on it to get to this point. Why was there not an option agreement put out on the building so we could do some of this testing and get in there and do some core sampling and compression testing of the soil? Because I don't think they did that in the 30s. I don't think they had the equipment to roll in and do compression on soil to get underneath it. Maybe they overcompensated by pouring 8-inch thick concrete for a grocery store that was designed to put foot traffic on it. So
I'll refer to Nick on that one.
You know, as far as the timing goes, that was the timing they put on the agreement from the time it's signed. You know, if as far as looking at the coring of the floor and everything like that, I mean, if it's was determined to not be structurally sound, we would just tear out those areas and put back in what is needed for those areas. But the entire structure itself would not have to be looked at necessarily. And I couldn't tell you what the condition is underneath the concrete either.
yeah, I mean, that's just my concern. I'm not there yet on the 450. I'm just not. I just think, and it's not that much part of it, but we're dedicating $2.4 million of ad valorem money to this project. And I don't feel like we're at a point where we have anything other than a concept of a plan. And I worry that we're just got build fever with this, that we've got a building, because 6 months ago we had another building that was going to be the building. And now we're at another building that's the building. And I don't see a lot of like really hardcore plans or really hardcore designs that we're going to get to where we should be at, other than your guys' reassurances to us that we can hit that $2 million. And I'm a little concerned where we're pulling the money from. My understanding is we're pulling it from unencumbered cash that should have been for salaries for PD and possibly fire. We're 3 months away from not having a fire chief. I don't know when we're going to have to do the next salary review for fire and PD, but that money that we're encumbering for this project, we may regret when we get into doing salary surveys that we don't have enough funds and that we have to reach back into some other thing, just like we did a few years ago, and property tax had to come up quite a little bit. That's the reason why you have a couple of those years we had some pretty dramatic raises in property tax, was because we had to cover a lot of stuff for salary surveys, millions of dollars. And I'm afraid we're there again, that we're taking the money from salaries to cover this type of project. And I just don't know if it's needed. I'm just not there. I'm not convinced that this project is where it needs to be at.
In regards to salary surveys, we just did one last year. We funded it, and we're still able to lower the mill levy. And it did look at police and fire salaries as
Well,
part of that.
how many positions are open right now with the PD?
I believe we have at least 9 or 10 that are open currently. And we have probably 3 or 4 that are actually in the hiring process currently for the police department.
And from the data that you sent me the other day, the 22 and 23 and 24 stop reports, from 22 to 23, we're down 27% in stops. From 24, we're looking like we're going to meet 23 stop reports. So the only thing that I can draw from that, and I don't know if 22 is even a high, I don't think it is. We don't have enough manpower out in the street to get back into the level of stopping that we had in 2022.
Actually, the last month or two, you have those numbers? I didn't have the numbers. You shared them? I think we're at 1,200? 1,300 stops for the month?
1,300
For the month?
tickets
month.
issued, I believe, last month.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with anything Mr. Sowers is saying or Commissioner Sowers is saying, but I think it's in my opinion, it's a better ideal for us to repurpose a building that's sat vacant for however many years, and especially on the south side of Dodge, because if you look to see what they get structurally built down there is basically nil, other than the big cheese plant, which is further south. I mean, if you look at, say, Garden City, as Nick mentioned, it's a $10 million fire station, and I think,
Which is a nice number, but I don't have any documentation of what they're building to what. I can only make the decisions on what I've been given.
No, like I said,
have 0
I'm not
documentation on what the 10 points.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, Rick. I'm just stating where I'm at on this.
Yeah,
What-
one of the options on here is to table it for the next meeting, which is perfectly fine. In that time, he can put down a full blown budget of what he thinks it's going to be and have a layout designed. Also, with conversations of just having this out there, we can reach out to the county and see if there's any interest there as well.
What's the building currently appraised at?
419,000, I believe, in that range. 415. It's low 400s.
We're just a little bit over on the appraised value for the purchase price.
My question was just primarily the long-term repayment of. I mean, you can cover this 450 with where we're at. How are we going to take care of the next $2 million, and what's the repayment look like on that? So, I am much the same as the mayor. I like the concept of repurposing, taking care of a little blight down there. Those kind of.
I think the biggest unknown we have is just that contamination side of it. If we were to pursue that avenue, the other thing is we do have an additional building that we need to figure out what to do with as well. So you do have fire station, the old fire station number 2. They'll have to be looked into utilization of that structure. The only caveat that is placed on there is we just have to inform the American Legion in regards to our intent to repurpose that facility, is what it states in the agreement. But there is nothing that specifically says it goes back or refers to them in that agreement. My recommendation was if we do look at repurposing and it's not for a municipal use, then if we do sell that facility, that we give a portion of that back to the American Legion.
As far as tickets issued for August of 2024, there was 1,347 tickets. Compared to August of 2023, there was 497, and August of 2022, there was 491. So year to date for 2024, we're at 4,647. And for the entire year of 2023, they issued 4,742. So
Yeah, I know there's been a big push by the police department the last couple of months to really look at stopping people and having those interactions with folks.
So, any further questions or any action on this item?
I'd make a motion to purchase the property. Approve the real estate agreement with Dodge Petroleum for the purchase of not to exceed $450,000 of the address 313 South 2nd Avenue.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion, and all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 3-1. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item, approval of purchase agreement of real estate located at 619 North 2nd Street Avenue. Report by Nick Hernandez, City Manager. Mr. Hernandez.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is a property that we've been looking at and cooperating and trying to work out some sort of financial arrangement with DW Skyrise for probably close to 2 years now. We've looked at every possible utilization of the facility and of the building known as the First National Bank building. It was declared a dangerous and unfit structure back in July of 2020. The building is in desperate need of immediate stabilization to try to remedy some of the damage that is occurring to the building. The mezzanine floor is leaking into the offices space and into the main floor and also into the basement. The facility basically needs completely gutted and sealed off in order for it to continue to deteriorate. We have estimates that have been provided by a demolition contractor to do the work for us. The purchase price of the property would be $740,000. We anticipate having about another $200,000 in demolition for the facility, which includes purchase of a chute and our tipping fees, so about another $250,000, so $1 million in total. In looking at the state of this building, there's really only was a couple options available to the current owners. One is to seek out $2 million from, well, actually it was $2.5 million from the city in a no interest bond or no interest loan for 10 years. Plus they wanted a RHID, which is Rehabilitation Incentive District, in the amount of, I believe it was $2.5–3 million as well. So they're needing about $5.5–6 million of public funds in order to make this project feasible. The alternative is it could be turned over into low-income housing, or the ultimate thing, it would continue to deteriorate, sit empty, and then it'd probably eventually go to tax sale, and the city would have to assume responsibility for the structure and have it demolished. And the demolition costs could easily exceed $2 million to tear this building down, given its location in the downtown district. So what we're asking the commission to do is to approve purchase of the 619 North 2nd Avenue in the amount of $740,000. We'll immediately begin work on stabilization and demolition of the interior. And then once that's completed, I think that at that point we can hit the pause button, come back to commission and start developing plans for future use. I think there's interest from local groups to potentially look at housing and cooperation there. There's also, we can reach out to developers in regards to outside developers coming in and redeveloping that structure, or we can even look at even a hotel developer to come and take a look at it. But step number one is really to get access to the facility and control, so we can mitigate any future damages and loss that may be occurring by this, by the issues that we're having with the water getting into the building. I do have Kevin here to answer any questions. He's been through the building several times too, and he's. I think we've had plenty of conversations with different folks to try to determine what would take to stabilize the facility.
So asbestos, is it, once it's gutted, it's gone, or?
So there's a little bit left, but we would be able to basically wrap, remove, and get that certified to take to Ford County landfill. So it's not a full remediation job like you would have to do like Lincoln School. It's pretty minor. So.
And then how about the communications on the roof?
So there is language in there. Paige and I have already spoken in regards to the facility manager or the group that leases out the rooftop. They have requirements that they must meet in regards to the condition of the building, and it states in there it must be not a dangerous unfit structure. I think we're going to have to communicate with that individual, but I also think that we need to work with the cell phone companies as well to determine the best location for their equipment. We do know that a new roof needs to be placed onto the building, and so we need to get that fixed. But any new roof that we place on and the equipment is to be relocated back onto the roof, then that needs to make sure that we're guaranteed that's not going to damage the rest of the building or the improvements to the roof. Also, I think there's opportunity, and we've had discussions, or the previous owners have had, or the current owners have had discussions in regards to moving the cell phone equipment to the basement, and I think that can easily be done as a long-term solution. Currently, they have 2 rooms on the top floor that are basically glorified closets that they store their equipment, and they would have to be removed and placed in a different location in order for that property to be best suited for long-term redevelopment on that upper floor. But I don't think that's a major problem. As far as the rooftop access, we don't necessarily need rooftop access or even see that as being a necessity. That'd be nice, but I don't think it's absolutely needed for any redevelopment purposes for that building.
Paige, can you tell me, I tried to read through the easements, who owns the rooftop? And then who do they lease to?
That's a great question.
That's why I asked it.
Yes, it is difficult to. I need
I
to
couldn't
pull it
figure
up.
out who Varsity LLC was versus.
That's Greg Stark and Caldwell Banker.
Okay.
When Greg was alive, he was the facility manager and was the individual that was responsible for that space upstairs.
So at some point in time, somebody paid a sum of money for the easement rights. What was that sum? Because it's in the documents, right? If I'm reading right.
I mean, the documents are very long, Commissioner Sauer, so
Which is
I
why
apologize.
I
I don't know the
asked.
answer off the top of my head.
Okay. I didn't know if you'd read through them or not.
I have skimmed through them. I won't pretend to be a telecommunications agreement expert. I can.
Not so much worried about that aspect of it as to what the easement cost originally to the people who paid it to, at one point in time, was the owner of the building. There's an amount in there of $740,000. Is that just this amount?
I believe that's a more recent figure, 740.
Yeah. I didn't know where that number came from.
Well, that's.
Is that this number that we're paying for the facility, or was that because it talks about and this is back in 2021. that amount was agreed to in one of those documents between Varsity LLC and.
So I'm in
That's
page
for the
3,
building.
283 of the online packet. Section 3, compensation.
And I'm happy to review this later too, and
Mhm.
and give you more comprehensive answers after I have more time to review.
And that's fine. I just wondered what it was going to cost to buy that easement. We're buying the building, and right now that easement cost is DW's problem. When we purchase this building, then that becomes our problem, and I just want to know what our problem is, the size of our problem.
to buy the easement.
Right.
Well, I will say that's DW doesn't own the easement.
I know that. That's what I'm
So-
saying. Their ownership of the building didn't include that easement.
No.
And so that's probably been a sticking point for them. And I don't want that to be a sticking point for us when we put $1 million into it and then we don't own the rooftop. And I understand there's a current lease and there's monies that are paid to that, and DW nor us would be privy to that monies coming in, but it seems it just is one of those points. I'd like to know what that easement cost and what its value is.
Mhm.
It's just one of those things that I'd like to know that.
Well, I think that's where the value comes into play too, because the building is a dangerous and unfit structure. So technically there's zero value on that roof.
Yeah, but
I
this
mean-
amount in the contract I read was in 2021. Is that not right? And didn't we declare this an unsafe building in 2020? And yet their contract says there's no known deficiency
I don't
from
know
the
if that
seller
was
to the buyer. So
divulged from the seller to the buyer.
I'm just
I don't know if it was.
I'm just trying to stay out of court again. I don't like court. I don't like to pay for lawyers. Sorry, Paige. But,
I know.
it's,
think-
it's such a drag.
From our perspective, as far as a lease, that the lease interest or our interest on the roof, from what I can gather, is just having a structurally sound roof and having their equipment be placed in an area which is out of our way, and so it really is out of sight, out of mind. Because if the roof is leased and there's no way out of that, then we just need to make sure we have a structurally sound roof, and that's not going to further degrade the building.
I get it.
I'm hopeful we can work with them. You're correct that it's not something that we've nailed down as of today's date. We're hopeful we can work with them, but we'd have to work with the parties to that easement and the lease.
55-year easement.
Wow. Starting in 2021?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
I'm not going to care when that ends.
What due diligence do we need to do as it relates to this easement agreement?
That's probably a better question.
I think that's a matter of the commission's opinion and how badly you want to save this building, essentially. And it's going to be something we're going to have to work through. It's not something that's settled as of today's date, or it's not. I don't think we've had any communication as far as offers to purchase this easement from them. So it's something we're going to have to deal with. But I mean, we've dealt with telecommunications companies before.
It wasn't a very pleasant experience in the last.
It hasn't been, but it's something that as a municipality, I mean, we have to deal with. And I think it's in their interest that this building is put back into a stable place and to work with us on doing that. And we're not trying, I think the underlying tone of this is we're not trying to kick them off the roof.
No.
And we'd be good partners with them. So that's where I'm hopeful that we can work with them. We all have the same goals as far as the telecommunications equipment and maintaining their easement.
Right.
But
The
I don't have that
I've
figured out
heard
today.
though is during the, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong in my thought process, but what I think I've heard is that during this refurbing to stabilize the building, we're going to disconnect the power.
There's going to have to be there's going to have to be communication with them. We can do quite a bit of demolition, but if we're going to really do that true stabilization, we're going to have to reach out to the telecommunication companies and determine a point where we can disconnect their power for a period of time.
So the timeline for DWS Skyrise is probably always they want it done immediately, like this contract to be executed immediately. But is it in our best interest to spend a little more time and try to reach out to the telecommunication and the easement owners and try to work out some kind of at least a concept of a plan so that we can know that we won't be in litigation if we go into demolition mode and we have to turn off power? I mean, I guess, is that a proper thought process?
I don't think we're going to turn off power until we absolutely need to, or if we discover something. At that point, we'll have to hit the pause button on our side to allow them to time. But it also says, and I remember in one of those, that even if they have to utilize a generator, the generator has to be provided by the leasee, the easement owner.
I kind of read through that a little bit, that they were responsible for providing power.
Providing power, period. So it even refers to a generator. If the generator's needed to retain power, that must be provided by them.
I won't ask any more questions.
Okay, any other questions? Any action? No action? Well, I would make a motion to table it until we get some more clarification from legal on what we do with the rooftop.
I'll second that.
I hear a second?
Mr. Reinhardt, second.
Yeah, I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. So the item is tabled. Moving on to other business, we have non-staff report. Mr. Hernandez.
Nothing to report.
Ms. May?
I had sent an email last week. We will have the budget hearing and approval of the budget on September 27th at 7:30 a.m. here. That's all I have.
No more?
Just a quick update on the code revisions. Since we haven't had an update in a while, Civic Plus told me that they should be entering their next phase, which would be the legal review phase, where we'd get assigned an attorney from Unicode to go through our code with us and what we might like changed or what they would recommend changing. That should be starting this fall, so should have more updates for you soon.
All right, thank you. Connie? Melissa?
Your Honor, I have one, if I could take a little bit of time. I just want to thank city staff and the businesses who've made the 9/11 Memorial possible. There are businesses that donate trees every year to that, and city staff and fire and EMS, both from city and county, participate in that. Just want to thank everybody for making that memorial possible each year.
Absolutely. Any other comments or concerns? If not, I'd seek a motion for adjournment.
Your Honor, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. We are now adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.